This lecture, we're going to be looking at Chapter 6. This chapter, I split it up into 3 sections. We're going to talk about energy first, and then enzymes, which are a type of protein that help to speed up chemical reactions in cells. And then we'll start with a general overview of metabolism. And all of this information is going to lead into Chapter 7 and 8. And in those 2 chapters, we're going to be looking at cellular respiration and photosynthesis. So this is kind of the basic building blocks to really understand the next 2 chapters. So like I mentioned, we're going to be looking at 3 different sections: energy, enzymes, and then a metabolism overview. This short lecture, we're just going to be looking at the energy part. So energy, a definition of energy is just the ability to perform work or to promote change. So energy is used for a lot of things, and we're going to look at it from the viewpoint of cells since this is a biology class. Energy comes in 2 really basic forms. So we're going to have kinetic energy. This is energy that is associated with movement. And then we can have potential energy, and this is energy, stored energy due to either structure or location. And the potential energy we're going to really focus on is chemical energy. So in cells, we store energy in the form of chemicals, specifically carbohydrates or the lipids, the fats. So we have this chemical energy that's stored up in the molecular bonds in those carbohydrates and fats. This is going to be demonstrating that these 2 types of energy, the kinetic and potential that we just defined, energy can be converted from one of these forms to the other. So if we look at this, so here we have a lady. She is drinking hot chocolate, which has lots of sugar, carbohydrates in it. So that's going to be our potential energy. So we're going to have that stored up energy in the food. She's then going to use that energy. She'll break it down and turn that into kinetic energy, which again is the energy of movement. So she's going to use that energy to hike up the hill. Once she gets to the top of the hill, she has potential energy, stored energy in the form of gravity. So she's up higher. Remember, gravity wants to pull us down towards the center of the earth. So potential energy, she's way up high. We turn that potential energy into kinetic energy, or energy of movement, so she goes back down the hill in this example. So this is just showing that we have these 2 general forms, and again, we can convert from one form to another. Energy follows certain laws that we find in physics and chemistry. These are called the laws of thermodynamics. We're just going to look at the first 2 laws and how they kind of relate to biology. So the first law of thermodynamics is called the law of conservation, or law of energy conservation. And this states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, but, as I just showed you, it can be transformed from one type to another. So we looked at how it was transformed from potential or stored energy to kinetic or usable energy. So we only have a certain amount of energy in the universe, but we can transform it to different types. The second law of thermodynamics is the law of entropy, and this is just that as we transform that energy from one type to another, so we can do that according to the first law. As we do this transformation, it's going to increase something called entropy, and I'll define entropy in a little bit. So entropy, this is when we go from really highly ordered systems, as we see on the left-hand side. So we have all of these purple blocks highly ordered together into a sphere. Over time, or as things get transformed from one form of energy to another, it's going to increase our entropy. And entropy is just a measure of how we categorize disorder or chaos. So over time, things go towards more disorder, or they go towards chaos. So in systems, we can actually measure the total amount of energy in a system, and the total amount of energy equals the usable energy, so energy that we can actually use to do some sort of work, plus any unusable energy. So this usable energy and unusable energy we can transform energy from usable to unusable. And as we transform energy, remember, according to that second law of entropy, these energy transformations are going to increase the entropy. And here we have a definition for entropy. It's just a measure of the disorder or chaos. And this is energy or disorder that we cannot use to do any sort of work. So entropy is a type of unusable energy. So that equation that we just looked at, so the total amount of energy equals the amount of usable energy plus the amount of unusable energy. So we're going to use a little bit of algebra here. So the H is going to stand for enthalpy, or this is just the total amount of energy that we have in a system. Remember that total energy, it's going to equal our energy we can use for work, and that's called G, or it's called the free energy, so our energy that's available to actually do something. And we have our usable energy, G, and to that we have our unusable energy. So we're going to have S, which is our entropy or unusable energy, and this entropy is related to temperature, so we're going to have a T, and this is going to be absolute temperature in the form of kelvins. So if we take that equation that we just looked at, we rearrange it and we solve for G, we actually get G, the amount of usable energy, equals the total amount of energy, or H, minus the unusable energy, so that entropy or the TS part of it. So we're really interested in how much energy is actually available to do work in your system. So if we look at this equation and we're looking at a certain chemical reaction, if our G, the amount of free energy, is negative or less than 0, so we have a negative free energy change, this means that that reaction we're looking at is an exergonic or spontaneous reaction. Exergonic, this just means that this reaction is going to give off energy, and generally it's going to give off energy in the form of heat. So exergonic, X, think of like exit, so energy is going to exit out of this reaction. And this is how the universe kind of works. So generally the universe is going more towards entropy, more towards disorder. So most of the time the universe is going to accept this exergonic producing heat, so it's going to be a spontaneous reaction. It's going to occur on its own. If we look at what happens if G is positive or greater than 0, so we have a positive free energy change. This is an endergonic reaction. So this means that you have to put energy into this reaction to actually get it to go. So it requires the addition of energy. This is not how the universe generally works. Generally, things, again, go towards disorder or chaos. They want to produce heat. They want to let go of energy. So endergonic reactions, they're not spontaneous. They require energy to be put into the reaction. A really important exergonic reaction in biology is the hydrolysis of ATP. ATP is considered the energy molecule of living things or of cells. And ATP, as you can see on the left, ATP is made up of an adenine, we have a ribose sugar, and then 3 phosphates. So it kind of looks like a nucleic acid, but instead of just one phosphate group, it has 3 phosphate groups attached together. So it's an adenine, or 3 phosphate molecule. So hydrolysis of ATP, this just means that hydrolysis, we're going to add water to our ATP, so we add water, and that causes one of our 3 phosphates to break off. And then in addition, we get a change in free energy of negative 7.3. Remember, if it's a negative number, that means that this reaction that we just went through is going to release energy. So hydrolysis of ATP, this is a way that cells can release energy from all of the ATP molecules in the cell. So this exergonic reaction, this ATP hydrolysis, we're going to couple it with an endergonic reaction. So remember, endergonic reactions require energy, exergonic release energy. So if we put these two different types of reactions together, we can get something to actually occur within a cell. So this is called reaction coupling. So we're going to take an endergonic reaction, a reaction that needs energy, and we're going to couple it to our exergonic reaction, a reaction that releases energy. And specifically, we're going to look at ATP hydrolysis. So you can kind of think of as the exergonic reaction, it's going to be the engine that's going to pull our endergonic reaction behind it. So that's why I have a picture of this train on this slide. So our endergonic reaction we're going to look at, we're going to take a glucose molecule, which is a simple sugar, and we're going to add a phosphate group to it. And in order to do this, we have to add in 3.3 kilocalories of energy. So remember, this is an example where our change in G is positive, and like we talked about, if your change in G is positive, it's going to be endergonic, it's going to require that much energy. We're going to couple this endergonic reaction to our ATP hydrolysis, our exergonic one that we just talked about. So we take an ATP molecule, we add water to it, we end up breaking off one of those phosphates, so we have an ADP, adenosine diphosphate, plus our third phosphate that was broken off. Remember, this reaction that we're looking at has a change in energy of negative 7.3, so that means it's an exergonic reaction. So we're going to couple these two reactions together. So we coupled our reaction, so we just add our reactants on the left, so glucose plus an ADP, and then we get our products. We get a glucose phosphate plus an ADP for our products. And we're going to add up our change in energy, so positive 3.3 plus a negative 7.3. That leaves us with a negative 4. So our change in G is still negative, so that means that when we couple these two reactions together, we're still going to have an exergonic reaction. So this is good. Remember, exergonic reactions, this is how the universe works. So we're going to couple these two together. They're going to still be exergonic. This reaction is going to proceed. It's going to be spontaneous. So I've been using this word spontaneous, and usually in just normal life, spontaneous, we generally use that to refer to something that's going to happen fast on its own. But in science, or if you actually look up the word spontaneous, spontaneous just means that the reaction is going to go. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen fast. So spontaneous reaction, it's not necessarily a fast reaction. So spontaneous reaction, it could actually take hours, days, weeks, but we're looking at living things. Cells can't sit around and wait for hours or days or weeks. You know, cells need things done fast so that you can get energy, use energy, build up molecules, break down molecules. So in order to speed up these reactions, we need a catalyst. So a catalyst is just going to speed up the rate of these chemical reactions, and then the catalyst is going to do this without being consumed during the reaction. So that's a really big, important part to this. So different types of catalysts that we find in cells, we have enzymes. These are proteins that work as a catalyst in living cells. So a lot of our catalysts are in the form of these proteins, so they're going to be enzymes. There are another type of catalyst called the ribozymes. These are RNA molecules, so it's a nucleic acid, and they have catalytic properties, so they can help to speed up reactions as well. We're going to really focus on the enzymes in the rest of the lecture, and also in lab we'll be working with enzymes as well. Okay, so this section we just kind of looked at energy a little bit, how energy works, how we can have exergonic and endergonic reactions, and then it kind of leads into our next section, which we're going to really focus on the enzymes, which is that protein catalyst that can help to speed up all of these different reactions.